This is First Encounter, a podcast exploring both the foundations and the future of historical romance. Hello, everyone. Welcome to First Encounter. I am very excited because today is the first episode where we are going to be really diving into a historical romance classic and discussing the book. And of course, how could I start with anything other than Lord of Scoundrels by Loretta Chase? Because everyone's told me forever that this is just one of the best books ever. Jessica Trent's the GOAT. We all know that, she shoots him. Spoiler alert. I will say off the bat, whole episode's going to be spoiler alert. So if you've not read this book, stop listening, go read it, and then come back. But I am joined today by Meg, who is one of the hosts of Trysts, which is a podcast I myself love. She and her co-host Lane just discuss books that they've read recently, mainly historical romance, not always, but mainly. Usually newer releases, but again, not always. But yeah, no, and they're fantastic. So if you guys haven't listened, you should go, and I will link it below here so you can find it and go listen yourselves. But Meg, I know, loves Loretta Chase and loves this book. So I asked her if she'd be willing to discuss it with me today, and she graciously agreed. So welcome, Meg. Anything you want to add or say before we start talking about the book?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm always happy to talk about Loretta Chase. She is one of my favorite authors. I think she's just a wonderful writer. And funnily enough, it's funny that you say that. Of course, I love Lord of Scoundrels, but it's not my favorite Loretta Chase. So.
Okay, what is your favorite Loretta Chase?
Oh, my favorite is Mr. Impossible.
Okay, yes. I've heard that book mentioned many, many times. I'm sure at some point down the road we will read it.
Yes.
Well, but I'll read it for sure, even if we don't put it on the podcast.
Absolutely. But in general, I just love, I love almost every single thing she's ever written. I can't universally recommend like every single one of her books.
Of course not.
Right? But in general, I just find that her writing is just really hits me where it counts, I guess. Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, she's fantastic. I was trying to think if I've read any of her other books, and none spring to mind. But I mean, she's still writing today. She's still releasing books. So she's had an over 30-year career, which is just amazing. Which, again, is why, I mean, you've been writing that many books for this long. There's going to be some that just don't hit the same. But yeah, I just know in general, she is one of the women that we look to as kind of being one of the main authors of this genre. And I mean, I've talked already in earlier episodes about why I started this podcast and all of that, but like, there's just so many classics of historical romance that I've not read because I started reading it really only like 4 or 5 years ago. And then I became friends with a bunch of authors, and so I just started reading their stuff, and then, so there's just so much that's been lost. But I've known for a long time that I've wanted to read this book, because everyone, Lord of Scoundrels, Jessica Trent, all these things, Dane, we can talk about all these things in a minute, more in detail, but so I just was like, I have to start with this book. And I've wanted to read it for a long time, but I knew I wanted to start this podcast for like a year. So now I've been putting it off and avoiding reading it because I wanted to save it for the podcast. But I did love this book. I just finished reading it last night. I wish I would have had more time to kind of collect my thoughts, but life. But it is so readable, first of all. I mean, I just kind of flew through it. And I think the dialogue, just their interchanges with each other, it's all just so fantastic. But I'm interested, Meg, to know, why do you think this has held up? Why do you think so many people love this book? Like, are there tenets of historical romance that come out in this? Why are we able to forgive some of the 90s-ness of it, which we can talk in a minute?
Yeah.
What makes this stand the test of time?
So, I mean, as I reread it this time, so I reread it for the podcast, and I was really thinking to myself, okay, let's read it and see, why do you think it is always held up as this big, like one of the game changers, right, of historical romance? And for me, I really think it comes down to the characters. I think it comes down to Dane and Jessica. And I think that it does continue with this, I would say, sort of traditional male-female romance where he is this alpha, he is really rich, he seems to have a lot of control, but Jessica is really the controlling force in this relationship, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I think, to me, one of the things that was super interesting this time reading it was really seeing Dane as a very unreliable narrator.
Yes.
So every time you're with Dane, he says all throughout the text, like, I'm a baluster. I don't care what people think about me, right? Like, you shouldn't care what anyone thinks about me. But he is so self-conscious.
Oh, yeah.
And just really everything, all of his choices and everything that he does is in response to what the world thinks of him. So that was one of the things I was thinking this time, is that he sort of problematizes the alpha hero a little bit, because when you're in his perspective, you see that he's so not in control of his impulses and his decisions.
Yeah. No, absolutely. One of the things, I mean, that struck me off the bat is just the long prologue, right? And I've heard people mention this prologue before, so I wasn't entirely surprised by it, but you don't see as much backstory now, I would argue, with books that have come out in the last, 5 to 10 years. You might get that much backstory, but it's going to be kind of interspersed and revealed as you read along, about kind of, you'll get clues later on as to maybe why the hero or heroine acts the way they do, because they'll reveal a piece of that background as you read. But kind of having it up front in this chunk, I think, is necessary for this book, because everything stems, in terms of Dane and his actions, from kind of him being that hurt, wounded little boy, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And so, but it was really interesting because the way that's written, it's just, it's almost kind of like painting this fairy tale picture, even though it's not necessarily a happy fairy tale. Not that all fairy tales are happy. I don't know. I just thought it was a really interesting way to start, but it is, I think, very, very necessary to the character. And I agree with you saying that it's really probably the characters themselves that have made this such a classic. I find that's true in general of books that we really love. Like, we might remember a crazy plot point or like a twist in the story, but I rarely find that that's what makes a book stick in your heart. Like, you might remember it, but it might not be one of those ones that you always return to. That tends to always be kind of those characters. And one thing that stood out to me, and I don't know if you would agree with this or not, but one of the things I feel like I see people complaining about online about newer books, and granted, I mean, people will say anything on Threads these days, so who knows? But I've seen it multiple times as people being, I'm so tired of particularly heroes, these heroes who just are these perfect men, and there's no arc, there's no character growth. Like, they're just there to support the heroine as she kind of goes on this journey of self-discovery. And in a weird way, I feel like that was a little bit of Jessica in this book, because I don't think it's a bad thing. She definitely changes in this book in terms of her mind and her perspective about Dane and how she understands him. But I don't feel like she changes fundamentally in terms of who she is, whereas there's a huge journey for Dane.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you on that. I do wonder if this feels to me like it's more 90s, like it's the hero who has to grow and change and become worthy of the heroine. So if we're using, right, I'm not going to say FMC, MMC here, because I don't think that, I really think this fits in a paradigm of heroine, right?
Yeah.
And in this case, I mean, Jessica has a very clear sense of her self-worth. She has a very clear sense of her actions and her decisions. Like, she knows what she's doing when she does them. And she also completely understands Dane. So in some ways, when I reread this, I actually thought that the character that I would compare her with the most is Marmee from Little Women. Like this
Oh,
perfect, like she knows her
I can see
role,
that.
right? And her role is to like help these young women grow and become the people that they're meant to be. And that's what
Hmm.
Jessica does with Dane, not in a maternal sense, but
Right.
a little bit in a
A
maternal
little bit.
sense, right?
A
Because
little bit.
he never
Like,
had that maternal
no.
love. He
She
never had
plays
any
him
feminine love.
totally perfectly at the end
Hmm.
when she makes him go after and get his son. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
She
she
knows
knows how to do
exactly
that.
what he needs to do and what's
Yeah.
best for him, and she makes him do it. So,
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting. But I think in some ways, though, that is also why people love her. And,
mhm.
you know, even when I first started hearing people talk all the time about this book, it was always referring to her. I mean, Dane, obviously, people is very much a significant kind of memorable character as well. But people are always talking about Jessica and how she is just like the goat of
Oh yeah.
heroines. And she is just this example. And I think it's because she is so strong. And even though there's elements of this book that do feel very of the time it was written, we've referred to the 90s here. It was written in 1995 is when it first came out. And so there are parts of this book that feel a little dated, which I think we are going to discuss a little bit, particularly around attitudes around sex work, some of these things. I think that knowing when it was written and even for today reading it, like it's very radically progressive in terms of her character. How confident she is in herself. She's 27, we're told, so she's almost on the shelf, right? She's
Mhm.
very kind of like, drives me nuts. But that was the attitude then. I've
Mhm.
written it myself, right? But she wants to start this business. She has this clear sense of what she wants to do, how she's going to care for herself, how she doesn't need a man. And then she also, though, when she meets Dane and has just this crazy, what she calls animal attraction to him and her feeling of lust towards him, like she gets that too. Like it may be a new thing, but she's not running from it. She's not scared of it.
Mhm.
And she's just so bold. I mean, for God's sake, she literally shoots him, which
Mhm.
obviously is the standout, piece of this book everyone talks about. And so I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that she doesn't fundamentally change. Like she's needed for Dane to become this changed, better man. More, well, maybe not better, but like understanding of himself, right?
Right.
But it just stood out to me. I was just thinking, I was like, she doesn't really change. She's just so fully herself from the
Yeah.
moment we meet her.
No, absolutely. Yeah, she's not a character who needs to learn a lesson. She is the character
Right.
who teaches a lesson.
Yes.
And I do wonder if the reason we talk about Jessica so much and not so much about Dane is he like not a swoony hero? That's my question, right? Well, what do you think?
He's swoony.
Because right? Because again, he's not
Well,
on the outside, right? He's like very
yes.
alpha, but then on the inside you're like, "Oh, he's not." You know?
Well, I don't, it's interesting because I personally don't love the alpha, right?
Mhm.
Like I'm not drawn to that over overprotective. Um and so there was things he did where I was just like, oh, get over yourself. But you're right that I mean the beauty of this and why this I think is such a remains a classic book and well loved is because Loretta really shows us that person underneath and helps us understand why. That it's not fundamentally who he is, it's just the way he acts. And there's a clear reason that we understand and Jessica understands or grows to fully understand
Right.
of why and how.
Right. And I'm not going to say that like it wasn't until 1995 and this book got written
Yeah,
that there was any conception of like a psychological reason for a hero's behavior or anything like that.
right.
So like I'm not
Yeah,
going to say that. But I do feel like heroes were expected to be more forceful and he is,
He is, yeah.
but then she's really the one who's in
Hmm.
control. Like I
Yeah.
said from the beginning, like she's
Yeah.
really the person in control of this relationship
She's got his number and she's making things happen. Yeah.
immediately. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Or if she needs to respond to something, she like immediately grasps it and does it. Like
Oh
when,
yeah.
I don't think she was expecting him to actually be like, okay, I'll marry you. Like, I think that really threw her. But then she was like, oh, okay. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this might work. Dane and kind of the way that he's presented. It's interesting because I don't know. I mean, obviously, this was written taking place during Regency. The kind of the meat of the book takes place in 1828. Um, well, technically not Regency, but what we all call Regency. So I think when she's talking about how Dane appears and
Mm-hmm.
his Italian heritage, she very much is describing the way he looks through the perspective of 1828 and
Mm-hmm.
what was acceptable. But I feel like Jessica sees him as the way that maybe us reading it in the 90s and today would have like, ooh, tall, dark, and handsome. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
that. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like,
Right.
and so it was interesting to me, though, how often she hit upon that he was not considered to be conventionally attractive, that, his nose in particular was kind of this thing that was looked down upon because it was, foreign Italian. It wasn't English. It wasn't, and when he sees his son and sees those traits reflected in him, he's very, but Jessica's like, oh no, he's very handsome. And when she explains that to him, he's like, what? Like,
Right.
how do you see me?
Right.
And I don't know, just this interesting balance you have to juggle when you're writing historical. Because another thing I hear people critiquing current books of, and something that I do when I write my own stories, is we're writing from our perspective here today in the
Mm-hmm.
2020s. And so we might be projecting more of a modern view onto these characters versus characters having more of the mindset of the time they're actually living in.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of an interesting way and balance, I feel, of how Loretta wrote it and how she
Right.
approached it. So it's supposed to be almost like he's not this typical hero, he's not this classic beauty. But then she also gave him kind of all these traits of like, he's tall, he's muscular, he's, all these things that are classic. And so it was an interesting, the way that she chose to describe him
Right.
was very intentional. And that
Yeah.
wasn't, I just thought that was unique.
Yeah, and I mean I think it also comes down to this very tight third person POV that she
Yes.
uses. So, in mid 90s we could have expected a book with a lot of head hopping, but we really don't get that here. When we're with
Hmm.
Dane, we're really focused and see things from Dane's perspective.
Hmm.
So, I wonder if this isn't like an 1820s version of beauty, but rather Dane just being like, I'm ugly because my dad thought I was ugly and everyone says I'm
Yeah.
ugly, right?
Yeah.
Like, is it 1820s or is this just Dane's self-loathing coming out?
Yeah.
And then we've got Jessica, who obviously I think she's like the most attractive person she's ever met. Like immediately she's like,
Yeah.
oh, this guy's gonna be trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
But yeah, it is, in some ways, this book, I think, is kind of a bridge in terms of that
mhm,
third narrative POV, dual POV, because it is essentially a dual POV book,
mhm,
you know. But there are moments where she does give us other supporting characters' perspectives, especially towards the end. Like, I was noticing Vatri because, he's plotting to get the money and
right,
steal
right.
the icon and all the stuff, right? And so it's not that it's exclusively the two of them, like I feel most books are now.
Mhm.
But like you said, it's very infrequent that kind of within a section you could transition and do the head hopping.
Mhm.
It really is kind of more defined section by section. It's kind of, I do see it as a bit of a transition from the
Yeah.
older style to where we kind of landed today, even further into the more exclusive.
Yeah. I will say that Loretta does this even today. She will give
Okay.
you often the POV of one of the villains. So relatively often, I'm trying to think, I'm sure she has a book where she doesn't do it, but in most of her books, we do get at least one other POV, and it is
Mm-hmm.
usually the villain. And she's trying to sort of explain what's going on so
Yeah.
that you don't get this weird, like, who's this person who showed up out of nowhere to do what now, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
because I do think she has external plots, and this book does have an external plot, even though most of it is focused on Dane and Jessica.
Mm-hmm.
There is this outside force that comes in at the end. I feel like the main difference between the way Loretta does it and the way it might be in a different book is that Loretta's other POV, it's I think many authors, if they're like, okay, I have to show what's going on over here. Like we have to figure out like how is this plot element going to come in? We have to show another character, but it'll be like third person omniscient. And so we're like, this person
Yeah.
did this, like snuck into the house. And you're like, who is it? Who snuck into the house? You know?
Yeah.
But Loretta gives it like from that POV. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
I really want this money and I don't like Dane very much. So how can I ruin Dane's marriage and get some money? You know, like
Yeah.
he's like, so you get the motivation there. So I think
Yeah.
that's, to me at least, the difference.
One thing we planned ahead a few things we wanted to touch on, and one that I just thought was funny that you said to me. You said, "What the heck is going on with Dane's arm?" So,
Right?
yeah, Dane's arm. What do you think is going on?
I honestly don't know. I don't know why this choice happened. So for anyone who doesn't remember what happened with Dane's arm,
Yes, thank you.
Jessica shoots him.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, "Hey, they get caught making out," and she's like, "Okay, you're gonna marry me, right?" And he's like, "Pfft, shoot me then." And she's like,
Mm-hmm.
"Fine, I will." So she comes and she shoots him, and then she's an amazing markswoman. So
Yes.
she shoots him just exactly in the right part where it's not gonna cause any lasting damage.
Yeah. She's
Right?
not trying to kill him.
She's not trying to kill him, she's not trying to maim him. However, even though he has recovered physically, he cannot move his arm.
Yeah.
So he can't move his arm. He refuses to put it in a sling because he's very vain, doesn't want to ruin the line of his clothes. So he just is like walking around for a good quarter to third of this book with an arm hanging limp. And it has an effect on their sex life, and there's all kinds
Mm-hmm.
of like weird stuff going on with this arm. I don't like, I honestly don't know what's going on. Do you have theories?
I just think it's purely psychological.
Right, but like
Well,
why?
obviously,
You
but
know?
like why? I think she just throws him for such a loop, right?
Hmm.
She is so unexpected in the way that she affects him, in the way that she responds to him and engages with him. Like she's not going to take his shit. Like she literally does shoot him when he's like, "I'm going to leave you."
Hmm.
I think that he's unaware of it, but that was such a weird,
Hmm.
crazy thing to happen that he just like doesn't know how to compute it, right?
Right.
And so he just has this mental block for a while because he's confused about himself, we come to realize. And later, when it starts to work again magically, is when at the end of the book, we find out early-ish, I don't know, maybe a third of the way into the book, that he has a son out of wedlock with basically a woman of the night that he's spent a woman with after his father died. And anyway, the way he talks about that son, we can also talk about in a little bit, and
Hmm.
his attitude towards him. But so we know he has this bastard child, this son, Dominic. At the end of the book, Jessica becomes aware of Dominic's existence. Dane wants nothing to do with him at all. But Jessica convinces him after some events happen that no, you really need to go kind of claim and take responsibility for your son. And so his arm starts working again without him even necessarily realizing it. He has to spring into action because his son is ill when he finds him.
Hmm.
And so he just kind of jumps in and does what needs to be done without thinking. And then he realizes, like, oh, I've been using my arm this whole time.
Right.
And again, we could talk about this forever and go into all the details in the backstory, but we know that when Dane was 8 himself was when his mother left him. He's kind of been this wounded child. He very much has this, his father treated him abominably, did not like him at all. You know, he's very much got this wounded inner child thing. And I think it's just like this part of him that Jessica mentally made go like, ooh, it was like record scratch. Like what's going on? And something about engaging with his son kind of like just making it okay. It's like it was just this mental block he wasn't aware of. Obviously, it was psychological, but
Right.
I think it was just a device that Loretta was using to show us, I think, one, how profoundly unsettled he is since Jessica came into his life, and then kind of as he's healing his inner child, right, with working with his own son, and then kind of being able to come around, and then it was just okay. I don't know.
Right. I've just always wondered, you know, I read the book and then like I kind of forget that happens, and then I remember again, oh yeah, why did that happen, you know? It doesn't necessarily make him rely on Jessica anymore. It's not like, to me at least, it's not like a Mr. Rochester thing where now Jessica has more power because he's just kind of dealing with it. I mean, I guess it's an outer symbol of like how he's just not healed, and then, you know, once he gets enough love and can show love to someone else, it starts working again. Like, I get it, but I'm also like, I don't know. It seems very heavy-handed to use a little bit of a pun, right?
Or not enough. It's almost
Right.
like too heavy-handed of a metaphor, yes, to show kind of like I said that, you know, the I messed up and now I'm healing. If that's all it's meant for, then I think it's a little much, because we can see that in other ways.
Right.
She's a great writer. She shows us this in different ways. And so I almost wish in a way, like you said, that it doesn't super affect him. I mean, they mention it from time to time. Like at one time, he's like, oh, I need to carry Jessica up the stairs. How am I going to maneuver this? How am I
Right.
going to, you know, like.
But again,
So
it
it
doesn't
is
stop him from
mentioned.
carrying her up the stairs. He still is like
He
strong
still
enough
does
to do
it.
it, you know?
Yeah, yeah, like they still have this
So,
moment, you know, but it doesn't like profoundly affect him.
right.
It's more like an irritation.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I almost am like, well, if you're gonna go that deep with the metaphorical representation, then like let's lean into it and let's let this
Right.
be like a real issue or cause a problem at some point because he can't do something
Right.
or
So I've always kind of wanted just a little, I don't know, something extra with that, because I've always been like, I literally always like, oh yeah, that's weird, you
oh,
know?
that arm.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
So I don't know. So if anyone else has any theories or has psychology background and can explain more to us, I don't know. Put it in the comments. That would be great.
right.
We'll discuss it. We'll discuss it in the Discord. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about, and you wanted to talk about, we both kind of were approaching this from different ways, is this idea of sex workers slut shaming approaches to just attitudes about sex and sexuality in this book. And I also want to talk about, I don't know exactly my thoughts around this, so, but I think an element of the way it's approached in this book and discussed in this book has a lot to do with class difference as well. So you brought this up as something you want to talk about. What interests you? What's standing out in your brain?
Well, I think that what's interesting to me is I do feel that in many ways this is a progressive take on sex work, and just sexuality in general in a romance novel from the mid-90s. So Jessica, her grandmother. Let's talk about Jessica's grandmother real quick, because Jessica's grandmother is basically like the femme fatale of her era. So
Genevieve or Genevieve, however.
yes, she's been married, what, 3 times? She is, you know, older now, and she is still like the it girl of
Turning
society.
heads, even in her 60s.
And she's helped raise Jessica. And so Jessica has no complexes about sex itself. Like, she does not think sex is bad, dirty, something shameful. She does understand that if she engages in sex and people find out, then it could hurt her reputation. Yeah. But that doesn't have anything to do with the sex act itself, right? So Jessica understands that like sexuality is a thing and it exists and it does have repercussions in society, but sex itself is not like bad or good. It
Right.
is. And so that's one thing that I think does feel progressive about the era. Like there are a lot of times where we had like forced seduction, or we had virgins who have to be coaxed into sex and like start to understand
Yeah.
that it's a good thing, things like that. So like they end up enjoying sex, but it's not, they don't see it as something just like in general that like anyone could do, and it's not a
Right.
bad thing, right? And this comes out, I think, a little bit in the attitudes towards sex workers. So Dane hires prostitutes on several occasions. He never goes through anything. So anyone who like hates cheating, like he doesn't actually do it, because he's very much that guy. Like as soon as he met Jessica,
He
that
just
was it for
can't.
him.
He
Right? He
can't.
couldn't do it for
Yeah.
some reason. This woman just doesn't. It's not attracted. I just can't do it
She's not
anymore.
pleasing him
Yeah.
anymore. He can't rise to the occasion.
Right. Right. That was weird. But he does hire prostitutes, and then Jessica even walks in on him
Yeah.
while he has two sex workers in his lap, and she never shames the sex workers for what they're doing. So she's very much like, hey, that's their choice. She does say they don't, like, yes, it's their choice, but they also don't really have another way to make a living.
Right.
So she's like, for those poor people who have to make a living doing that, it must really be crummy.
Yeah.
But she doesn't really go into like why it must not be great, right? So she's not like, oh, because it's sex, like, right? But she's like, oh, that must be a hard profession. And even the mother of Dane's child is treated pretty compassionately by Jessica, in my opinion.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, by Jessica. But again, Jessica is perfect, right?
Yes.
Jessica is the perfect character, and she shows you the example of how you should be. And so I think for a reader of the time, you're being shown an example of how you should treat sex workers, how you should treat sex by Jessica. That is pretty progressive. But, we do have, she does make comments about the sex workers, like, oh, you like the ones, I think she says they're like cows because they have big udders or something like that.
Yeah.
But again, it's more, she's not saying it to them. She's saying it like to make fun of Dane.
Yeah, because she's commenting, and he makes some comment at some point too. She refers to the women that she finds him with as being more Rubenesque,
Yes.
more amply endowed. And so she's kind of questioning, like, well, is that the woman he likes? Because she's
Right.
of course this slim, trim little thing, and so I question, like, is she just trying to get under Dane's skin? And also, is she maybe feeling some insecurity when
Right.
she makes that comment? Because she's like, well, if that's what he's attracted to, that's not me. So,
Right, exactly.
so I don't know. I was like, well, that's not the greatest comment. But I also didn't feel totally, like, offended when I read it, because I felt like I could kind of get where she was coming from.
Right, exactly. Like, should we all be compassionate, wonderful people who would like never use a slur? Obviously, right? Of course. But Jessica is she is very jealous in that moment, right? And she should have been making fun of Dane, and instead she uses the sex workers as this, I think, proxy to do so. But in general, I think that the attitude of the book is pretty progressive, even for today's books, which I think is really interesting. Recently read a book that wasn't published in the 2020s, but it was published like probably in the 2010s, that had some like really slut shaming moments in it. And this book does not engage in that way, I would say, at all.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because I think part of what makes it progressive is not just her overall attitude, right? I think that in of itself we can say, especially for the time it was written, was pretty progressive. But also the fact that she herself does not have personal experience when it comes to physical sexual acts, right? She is still a virgin. She's never had a relationship with a man. And I think when we see it even nowadays, like, people are wanting to write more sexually forward, progressive women in their books, but often, we're writing them, and I say we because this is something I think about when I shape my own characters. It's often someone who maybe has been married previously, so they're a widow, or some reason where they would have already had sexual experience. And so I think in some ways that was pretty revolutionary, that she would have these attitudes attitudes without necessarily herself having experienced or engaged in sexual activity. But I do think that it's maybe a little, I don't know, it doesn't make it unprogressive, but there's a clear explanation of why she has this mindset by presenting her grandmother, right? So it's not just that she has this wildly radical attitude. It's like there's a very clear putting Genevieve in as a character makes us understand.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it makes it's an explanation of why she would have this radically different mindset.
Yeah.
So yeah, when it comes to Jessica, I think this book is super progressive and I really appreciate it. When it comes to Dane, on the other hand, this is where I think this to me is where I mentioned ideas around class come into things, because he very much distinguishes Jessica differently from women he's engaged with because she is a lady, right? And he's not necessarily, well, I shouldn't say that. I was going to say he's not necessarily disrespectful of the woman he hires, right?
Well, he's not especially respectful either, let's be honest.
Right.
You know,
But
he's not going to be like violent. He's not going to ask them to do anything that they don't want to do. But he's also not.
Yeah, he's not misusing them, but he's very much like, I'm paying you money. You're here for a reason.
Right.
You're providing a service. So he's not treating them well per se, but he's also not being a bastard about it. He's not being awful and terrible. There was kind of a couple things that stood out to me with him. They explained that he had an almost entrapment into a marriage. I believe 8 years prior. 8 years happens a lot as a time frame in this. 8-year-old, 8 years ago. And where he had been kind of purposely found kissing, and very innocently kissing. I think it was explained as on the temple.
Yeah.
Yeah, this young woman, and then at her uncle's house, and then all of a sudden her relatives all pop out of the bushes, kind of like, oh, you must marry. And of course he doesn't, because, you know, it's him. But so he's very cynical and does not want anything to do with like respectable women and ladies, and just so he is very resolutely like sticking to my prostitutes. Like, this is, I understand this. You know, we get in some of the prologue flashback that he, from a young age, his friends introduce him into prostitutes, and he also understands very much kind of money in exchange for a good, and all of these things. So he kind of has this mindset where he's like, no ladies. And so when he has an attraction to Jessica, when they run into each other, when there's speculation around them because of how they've behaved in public around one another, he's very like, I can't, she's a lady, I don't want to get trapped again, I don't any of this. And I think there's kind of on one side of it, after he famously, well, maybe not famously, but in my mind, infamously, he kind of gets into an altercation and gets drunk on their wedding day. They stop at an inn, and he runs into a friend who kind of disrespects Jessica, thinking that she herself is a prostitute. And
yes,
Dane takes offense. They get in a fight, and then they go drink it off after, right? So they do not have a wedding night on their wedding night because he is drunk, he's whatever. And he wakes up the next morning, and I can't remember exactly how it was phrased, but he says, you know, he's kind of scared of the fact that she's a virgin, and he knows this. And he's like relieved to find that he hadn't violated her. And I just thought that was an interesting way to put it, that he's still seeing her as this kind of separate, fragile thing.
I actually love this role reversal because, again, I just talked about how in a lot of romances of the time, we've got this like virginal, usually wife by the time they get married, you know, and then she has to be seduced and like understand that like sex is good. But this is a complete role reversal, and Jessica has to seduce Dane because he is convinced that he is brutish, horrible, he's going to hurt her, you know, it's terrible. She's a breed of woman, like quote unquote, that he has never engaged with in his life, and he just doesn't know what to do. And she's like, Dane, I like you for the way that you are. Like that's why I want you, is because you are a big, strong brute. And so she is the one who has to seduce him.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's like perfectly executed, but I do love the concept and the idea of it. And just, again, I think this is why this book stands the test of time as well, because it like really engages with this, what you think is going to happen, and then it reverses it. And I love that.
Well, and it plays with these ideas that we have of kind of a lot of what was standard at the time, like you said, and her being the one to seduce him and being more confident in that moment and knowing what she wants, right?
Exactly.
She does say at one point, she's like, well, you're going to have to teach me. I'm a good student. Like, just show me what you like, because I don't know what the heck I'm doing. But like, you know, so she's maybe not confident in knowing what she's doing, but she's confident that she wants this and she can make it happen. She can learn. She can be good at this. So there's kind of, he has very much, I mean, again, we get all the understanding of why he's approaching her differently, but he very much sees her as this separate thing, right? That he has to treat in a respectable way. And then getting back to the mother of his child. I'm blanking on her name all of a sudden. Charity? Is it Charity? Okay. And he's very bitter because he feels like she purposely... The book makes us believe that she did purposely.
I want to say, let's be honest. Like, even according to Jessica, who I'm taking as the authority figure here, that's what she did, you know. And according to Charity, it's kind of why she did it.
It was again another entrapment thing, right?
Yes.
So she purposely became pregnant, and we learn later that she was with Dane and his friend at the time, kind of trying to lie. I don't really care who ends up being the father. I just
they're both rich. They're both noblemen.
She wants to basically force a rich man to have to help her care for their child, and so she thinks this is a way she can get money. And because of this, because of her trying to extort him for money, and of course, again, we know it's Dane's child because of the distinct features and all of that once it's born, and not his friends. But you know, he's very bitter about this, but I don't know, it's interesting because I can't decide if the way that these different types of women and the way he interacts with them, the way it's presented, is purely because for some it's a job and it's they are prostitutes and he is paying them, and for Jessica that's not the case, right? She's his wife, she's a lady. So I don't know if it's so much just a distinction of the type of role they're occupying in his life, or if it does have to do with class, or if it's both. But I just thought it was really interesting how he mentally sees these women in very different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually think Charity and the way Charity is treated in the book is really fascinating, because I also think it's different than what you might expect from a book of the same era, which is that Charity is not condemned for having a child or wanting money to take care of the child.
Right.
Like, Jessica's like, yeah, it's your kid. You should be paying for it.
Yeah.
What Charity is condemned
what she
for.
wanted was exorbitant, but
right, sure. She's like, you know, she expected a little much. Like, she was expecting kind of a lot of money for a one-night stand, but you did have a child. You do need to take care of him. But what Charity is condemned for is the fact that even though she is getting a stipend, she is not using it to care for her child.
Yes.
So she's condemned for being a bad mother, not for trying to get money to take care of her child, right?
Right.
Which I think is really an interesting take on it. And even at the end, Charity gets a lot of compassion and almost, I don't want to say she gets a happy ending, right? Because it's not, she doesn't get like a happily ever after. But she does get the opportunity to live a life, I don't want to say free of consequence, because that's not exactly what happens. Yeah. But she gets a second chance at success, right? Like, you made a bad choice and you shouldn't be trapped because of that choice. And I think it's a really interesting, and also like to compare with Dane's mother, who did a very similar thing, right? Like, she abandoned her son. She abandons her son in the beginning of the book. She leaves him She leaves her husband for another man, and she leaves Dane with her husband. And again, Dane, I think for Dane it's all mixed up, and I think this really informs the rest of the book, because for Dane, he's like, his mom not only left his dad for another woman, for another man, she also abandoned Dane, the child. Yeah. And so Dane's like, okay, well, I must be unlovable then. And like, I get that this is very reductive, right? Like, we all get it. This isn't one-to-one, you get abandoned when you're a child, and so you're just unlovable for the rest of your life, but it all plays in, and it all plays in with his son as well, Dominic.
Well, and this is again where we need Jessica to help Dane see a different perspective, because she, in talking about Charity, but then kind of referring later to his mom and helping him see it, she says, well, Charity letting Dominic go is actually what's going to be best for Dominic. Like, she is doing the best thing for him, because she's just not the type of mother who's going to be able to provide well for him. Right. And give him the love and care he needs. And so her leaving him with us, is really the best thing, and then helps Dane see. She's like, well, 2 years after your mother left, it was this life at sea. They were in foreign climates. It was this crazy thing. And both she and the man she ran away with got ill and died. Right. And she's like, what kind of life would that be with you if she would have taken you with him? You could have died too. How would you have been taken care of? And so, you could argue that maybe leaving him with his father because his father was terrible was not the best thing for him. I mean, I think you can make arguments either way, but Jessica reframes it as maybe this was the way that she was trying to do what was best for you. And it helped you just kind of reframe and see that in a little bit of a different way.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So it's interesting, because I think I don't think, Charity isn't necessarily presented as a sympathetic character, but she's not harshly judged either.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. Charity makes some very bad decisions and some very hurtful decisions, right? Like, she is not a kind person, and she's not presented as such, but she also is presented as a human. So she is not a one-note villain. The way, let's be honest, Vautry is.
Vautry's a one note, right? Villain, yeah.
But Charity is not.
Yeah. But yeah, there was so much in this book. I mean, it's interesting because the last part of the book, the tone does shift once Dominic is introduced. And I can't say I loved the end as much. I don't dislike that storyline. I think it was very crucial to us fully understanding and seeing Dane's growth. Like, I don't know if I need all these new people at the end. But like, it was so needed for that full circle everything with Dane, and he needed Jessica, right?
Yeah.
He really needed her to guide him and through this and be like, no, this is right. Yeah. This is what we're going to do. And her to reflect back to him and understanding, and her to show him love, I think, because the part, before they introduce his son is after they are married, and they're really starting to connect with one another, and he's gaining some confidence, or maybe not confidence, but seeing himself differently, because he's seeing himself through Jessica's eyes. We talked before about the way Loretta talks about his looks, and Jessica's really like, oh no, I was attracted to you from the start. Like, did you not realize that? Like, holy crap, I couldn't keep myself away from you. Yeah. And he's like, wait, whoa, what? Yeah. And so I think, her showing him all of that, him starting to soften a little bit, is what left him able to even contemplate taking his son into his life.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that I agree with you, and this may be the reason why this isn't like my favorite chase, because I don't find that the plot holds together quite as well. Yeah. Thematically, I think it works. Like, it makes sense that we have Dominic show up. I understand it and I appreciate it. I will let's just say I appreciate what she did, and I completely, I understand differently than the arm. Like, I get it. Like, okay, I get Dominic. You know what I mean? The arm, still don't get it, but Dominic, I understand. I also love at the end where they finally have, like, they have their first marital dispute, right? Yes. Like, they've been arguing this whole time. Like, they argue constantly. They're a battle
God.
couple. Like, that's
Yeah.
how they fall in love.
They
Like, that's how they show affection.
back and
right?
forth at each other. Yeah.
And then finally, he's like, you need to do what I tell you to do. And she's like, fine. You want to have a quiet, docile, submissive wife? That's what you'll get. And he's like, oh my God, this is the worst. Like, this is awful.
Oh, great.
And I think it's just perfect too, because she's not having a sex strike. She's not like being super, hostile to him. She's really just literally giving him what he says he wants.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, oh, I don't want that.
I know. This is not the woman, my, fiery little Jessica.
Right.
Right.
So I do really like that because, this is also the moment where he's like, this is where I put my foot down. Mm-hmm. Is like, I don't want Dominic here. And she's like, well, that's where I put my foot down. Like, I want Dominic here. And so this is the one time where he doesn't give in to her because let's be honest, every other time in the book, she seduces him or she convinces him or she shoots him, like one way or the other, he does what she wants. And this is the one time where she's like, okay, I'll do what you want this once. Of course, she's going behind his back the whole time to go check out Dominic. Right. But still, so I really like it. It just works perfectly, in my opinion.
It works great. And I'm not even going to be able to explain how she does this, but Loretta weaves magic around making sense of why they actually agree to marry one another. Mm-hmm. Because it's like to spite each other, but also an excuse to be together all at the same time. Like, and I can't explain that dynamic. Like, you just got to go back and read it for yourselves, people, because it's just so beautiful. Meant to be this punishment that he'd have to marry her, but then it also allows him to be like, oh, well, I'd have to be with her.
He's just... I love the whole shooting thing. I think it's so great for many reasons. But I mean, first of all, he's the one who says, well, then, fine, you want to marry me, you have to shoot me. And so she takes this like action to go and show him public, because she shoots him publicly. This isn't like pistols at dawn, right? We have to keep it quiet. She goes in the middle of a party and shoots him like that in front of everyone. But this is like her laying a claim. She's like, I do want to marry you. And if kissing you in front of people isn't going to do it, then shooting you in front of people is going to do it. So like one way or the other. And so it gives him this excuse to be like, oh, okay, I guess I will marry you,
Yeah. And there's a whole thing with, she's hired a lawyer and she's trying to, basically she's like, if you're not going to marry me, you're ruining my reputation. I won't be able to start the kind of business I was planning on because no one's going to buy from a woman with a ruined reputation and whatever. We haven't even gotten into the icon. I don't know if we need to, but, but yeah, she's like, so essentially she's like, if you're not going to marry me and make me respectable, then I'm going to sue you for all this money because I'm now not going to be able to marry or take care of myself or anything. And so he is just kind of like, oh, fine. Well, if I'm going to have to upkeep you and pay for you, might as well marry you, right? And it's just so great.
It's great. So it's not quite like a courtroom drama scene, like not it's because there's no judge, right? But it is very much just like negotiation and like they're sniping at each other the whole time. The lawyer's like, we're in Paris, we're not in London. Like Parisians love it when women go a little nuts and like have a crime of passion. And this is not a crime of passion. Like this is premeditated. She planned it all out. Like it's like everything about the negotiation scene is like incredible.
Well, and they were so careful to tell us at the very beginning of the book that she is the best. Comes from a family of great marksmen, and she is the best.
Oh,
so everyone in the family is good, but she's the best.
It is literally Chekhov's gun. Like
it is.
From the beginning she's really good at shooting, so she's gonna shoot someone. Someone's getting shot.
Yeah, I know. It's so great, but yeah, I don't know. It's really interesting, though, because it's not until after they're married and talking, after she does finally successfully seduce him, you realize that they both still misunderstood how they got there, though, because again, they were found, what led to the shooting is they were found at a party in an intimate embrace. They weren't, I think her bodice was down. They were kissing. They were seen by people. And we later learned that kind of a disgruntled friend of Dane's had led people there, but he thinks that she set it up, and he's bitter because of his previous experience of kind of almost being trapped, right? So he's just like, "Ugh, she did this on purpose. She's trying to get me." And she thinks he did it on purpose to humiliate her, right? And to ruin her, because they've had a lot of back and forth leading up to this moment. And so, I don't know, I just thought it was interesting that that's not cleared up before the wedding. And they both have this moment of like, wait, what, you didn't? Like, maybe I didn't have to marry you because, like, you didn't set this up. But they're happy at that point.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think it's more, I didn't have to refuse to marry you in that moment, right? I'm like, I guess I'm glad we ended up together after all,
Right. I know, it's so funny. But no, I mean, she just sets it up so beautifully. One thing that I did think was kind of funny, and I don't know if this is a 90s thing or a Loretta thing or what, but she made Jessica's brother so pathetic.
And Birdie is
quite, I mean, the whole
special.
reason she comes on the scene is to kind of try and rescue her brother Birdie from Dane's clutches, right?
Yeah.
Because he's kind of taken to following Dane around, and in doing so has lost a lot of money in gambling and things like that. So she's trying to get her brother away from Dane.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's just funny because I just don't feel like people currently are writing people quite that on the nose anymore, right? It's a little more subtle. Like, you might have a pathetic figure, but you're not going to present them without at least a little bit of sympathy.
Yeah, Birdie, Birdie, he's very much, Jessica's basically like, ugh, I have to protect him. He's my brother. It's the trope we see is everything for my brother, everything for my sister, right? And that is what this is engaging with. However, it's because Birdie is he's such a doofus, right? Like, he's just terrible. And Jessica, like, even tries to convince Dane. She's like, Dane, he just doesn't have the same intellect that you do. Like, can you just not make him lose all his money, please?
Yeah.
He doesn't have the same money you do, and he doesn't understand that, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because there is this point kind of before things get so drastic that she shoots him. But I mentioned the icon. She finds this old religious icon that is worth a lot of money, and he very much wants it. He covets it, and he's willing to pay her like a lot of money for it. I can't remember how much. I think it was like $15,000 or
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. Even today, I'm like, I'll take 15,000, thank you. But like, and she basically says at one point, she's like, well, you know what? You don't have to pay me. You just have to let my brother go, right? Just leave him alone, do something so that he'll stop following you. And he's just he thinks it's this trap, and he's so insulted. And like, what do you mean you won't accept payment? And because again, like, she's established that he's very kind of mercenary in the way, transactional in the way he thinks about things, because he learned money can get him what he wants. And I don't know, it's just so interesting. It like sets up this moment, and she's like, dude, this could have been easy on you. I was being easy on you. That scene too, though, I do have to mention this because it was pointed out, and before I read it, by my friend Lindsay, that there's this moment in that scene. They've met in like a coffee shop or tea shop or something, because they're haggling again, kind of about the icon. She just got it assessed. Dane went with her, whatever, and he comments on the fact that she's like drinking her tea with her gloves still on, and she's like, well, I can't get them off. There's like all these millions of pearl button, little tiny buttons and stuff. And there's this moment where he like reaches under the sleeve of her jacket and starts unbuttoning the gloves. And it's so just like, I'm like, this right here is the reason I love historical romance, because he is like undone by a wrist. And it's just, I don't know how to explain it other than that. But I just,
the other thing I love about it is that she turns it around, because he's also using this as a moment to be like, I'm going to ruin your reputation in front of everyone.
Yeah.
And she's like,
Yeah.
oh, really? How are you going to do that? And he's like, well, I'm going to make love to you in front of everyone in this cafe. And they're going to see that your reputation is terrible. And she's like, fine, do it. And so he like does the glove and she is like very into it. But then when it's over, she's like, oh, you think my reputation was ruined? Because I think yours was actually ruined. And he's like, God damn it. He's like, it is. It's all my fault. Now everyone's going to think that I like her and I don't like her. Of course, he, again, completely unreliable narrator in Dane. Because of course he thinks she's the most amazing, sexiest, wonderful woman in the world.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
Because, well, I mean, I guess we haven't even discussed this, but again, I think if you've read the book, you know, but if you haven't and you're still listening at this point, he very much has this reputation as like, he's known as Beelzebub, right?
Oh yeah.
And he's embraced the no one's gonna love you, you're, you know, and so he's just taken on this persona. I mean, we've talked about the persona, but what that persona is very much this harsh man who doesn't care about anything and nothing can stop him. And so this tender, gentle moment with her, she's like, oh no, you think this is hurting me? She's like, this is tarnishing how everyone sees you because you're being kind to this lady. You're having this moment with her. It's just, oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's very good. And I do, I have to say, I love the Paris setting as well.
Yes.
Because you don't get that very often in historical romance for some reason, but it's a great setting. So I think it allows for more freedom than a London setting, right? It's very fun.
Yeah. Well, and again, another way that kind of Jessica's more modern, bold approach to sexuality seems to fit. And
right.
Yeah, because she's in Paris. She's not in staunchy London.
Yes.
You know?
But and then she can allow it to happen as well. Whereas, like, again, they even talk about if you shoot a man in London, reaction is not going to be the same, you know? And she's like, good thing we're in Paris then. Right. We ride at dawn.
So if you are, you know, for me, people like me who are listening and myself, what Mr. Impossible, but
so I love Mr.
Loretta's,
Impossible.
Yes.
I will say it is early 2000s. I think it's 2004 is when it was published. It is set in Egypt, so it's set in colonial Egypt. So I will point this out.
Yes. This is why I've heard
people, of it. Yeah. So if people are like, you know, I don't know if I want to read about like colonialized peoples, you know, that's okay. You don't have to read Mr. Impossible. What I love about the book is that it is a himbo hero. So Loretta Chase writes amazing himbos. So if you are like, you know, I'd rather read something published a little more recently, then I would say check out 10 Things I Hate About the Duke, which is also a himbo hero. And but she's written several. So the book after this one, actually, The Last Hellion, is also a himbo hero. Like, she loves a himbo and she can write them very well.
I've heard a lot about that book, The Last Hellion.
But just in general, I think if you want to read a Loretta Chase, I would... And you are coming in to historical romance, like in today's historical romance, I would start with her most recent series. It's called the something about the Devilish Dukes or something like that.
Okay.
It starts with a Duke in shining armor, and then the second one is 10 Things I Hate About the Duke. I am kind of a chaos reader, so I would say start with whichever one you want. I also do.
How you read.
Yes. I also do truly, truly love Mr. Impossible. It is very much the Mummy without supernatural elements and set in the 1820s. It's truly incredible. Like it starts out very similarly to the Mummy in that there's a woman whose brother disappears and she needs to find someone to help her. And so they're like, you can find a guy to help you, but he's in jail, so you got to go bail him out. So she goes to jail and she haggles. Right. So this is like very much inspired by the Mummy. It is not the same movie, but you can feel the like little inspiration points. So she gets him out and then he's just like, all right, I'm just going to follow you around. He literally is like, I'll be the brawn to your brains. Tell me what to do, you know, which I also love. So.
That's great. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much, Meg, for being here with us today. And
yes, thank you for having me. I
Yeah.
do, like I said from the beginning, I truly think Loretta Chase is a genius. Her
Oh
writing
yeah.
is just so much
Yeah.
fun, and I hope you enjoy reading her.
I'm very excited to read more for her. And I'm very much um Julia Quinn has recently introduced the JQ editions, so they're
Hmm.
doing special treatment, to some historical romance classics. So they're getting fancy covers and illustrations and spread
Yes,
edges and all the
I
stuff. We
haven't
love
seen
it.
it,
We love it.
but
Yeah, they haven't
I'm
like revealed anything yet, but Lord of Scoundrels is one of the first three
yeah,
books that they're doing, and so I'm
yeah.
very excited about that. I'm a sucker. I'm going to sign up for that
I know,
subscription
right?
for sure. Get all the special editions, but yeah.
Right. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. As I said, Meg, if you enjoyed this conversation, she has these kinds of intelligent conversations all the time with Lane over on Plot Trysts. And again, I will link to the podcast below. You guys should listen. It's fantastic fun. Other things coming up, I will share very shortly online with all of you what's coming in February. I'm very excited about it. Again, we'll have an interview with an author and then another deep dive into a book, just like we did today. That's kind of a classic of historical romance that I personally have yet to read because I'm crazy. But I'm so excited that I've had the excuse to read this. And also, if you guys are excited and want to chat about all this stuff, as I mentioned, we have started a Discord associated with the podcast. I will put below the link. You can sign up to be part of it. We're starting to chat books over there, kind of book clubby about the books we're deep diving on, discussing what we love about historical romance, the authors we're talking to, all those things. I also have started a Patreon link to this. I know I just started the podcast, but I'm starting it now because the perk of membership, if you join, you'll get any new book I release as part of that membership. And I have a new book coming out at the end of this month. Beguiled, the second book in my Beaumont series, is coming out on January 30th. So if you sign up before then to be part of the Patreon, you will get that book as part of your membership, which is pretty exciting. So thank you all again so much for listening to First Encounter. Thank you, Meg, for being part of this first book discussion with us. I'm so excited, and I'm so happy that I finally had a really good reason to read this book and dive in. Happy listening, happy reading, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.